Good. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I am thrilled to be joined by Council Chairman Julian Jones, County Councilman David Marks, Congressman John Sarbanes, Morgan Drayton from Common Cause, Emily Scarr from MD PERD, and Samay Kindra, who was a member of the Fair Election Fund work group we're going to talk about a bit this morning. We know that fair, competitive elections are good for democracy. They make our communities stronger. But for far too many people, the cost of running for office has been far too high, and it's been a barrier much too large. We believe that government should be accessible and open to all of our residents, everywhere, including our elections. And we should do all that we can to ensure that everyone can participate. Simply put, money should not be a barrier to run for office. That's why in my first month in office, we introduced legislation to create a local public financing system for our elections. With a public financing system, we reduce the influence of big money and special interests in campaigns and give everyone a voice in our elections. Thanks to our partners on the County Council, that legislation passed with bipartisan support and put the question on the ballot in 2020. A year ago, with the resounding support of our residents in Baltimore County, the amendment passed and we're working to create a fair election fund. We did that first by setting up a work group to develop recommendations based on best practices from other jurisdictions around the state. Those recommendations were released last month and give us a blueprint for public financing here in Baltimore County. I want to thank Council Chairman Julian Jones, Councilman David Marks, and the rest of the Fair Election Fund work group for their efforts to support and develop these recommendations. And today, I'm announcing legislation to officially create Baltimore County's Fair Election Fund, which will begin in 2026. Here's how it works. Candidates who choose to opt in would see their donations matched by public dollars, with the requirement they focus on grassroots donations from the community. To qualify, candidates who opt in are limited to a maximum contribution of $250, compared to the state's max contribution of $6,000. Only contributions from Baltimore County residents will qualify towards the threshold required to receive these matching funds. We will also use a tiered matching fund system that incentivizes small dollar contributions. As the individual contribution goes up, the amount matched goes down. For County Council candidates, this means that $4 in matching funds will be available for each dollar raised of the first 50, $3 for the second 50, and $2 for the third $50 increment. Matching funds for council candidates will be phased out after $150. For county executive candidates, $6 in matching funds will be there for each dollar raised of the first 50, $4 for the second 50, and $2 for the third $50 increment. Matching funds will also be phased out at the $150 level for executive candidates. For example, a county council candidate who receives a $50 donation would receive $200 more in matching funds, for a total of $250. The maximum donation of $250 will be matched by $600 for a county executive candidate and $450 for a county council candidate. It's important to note that candidates must also reach a certain threshold of support before they can receive any of these matching funds. County council candidates must receive at least $10,000 of qualifying contributions from at least 125 individuals. Candidates for county executive must receive at least $40,000 of qualifying contributions from at least 500 contributors. Matching funds will also be capped for each election. $80,000 of matching funds for county council candidates and $750,000 of matching funds for executive candidates. By matching smaller donations from community members, this system gives a bigger voice to community leaders and our residents. This is an investment in fair, competitive elections and a stronger Baltimore County. Again, I want to thank my partners on the council for their partnership on this effort. Look forward to passing this fund with their support and having a program in place for the next election cycle. With that, I'd like to introduce Congressman John Sarbanes, who's been a longtime champion and advocate for this issue, as well as many other election reforms at the national level. Congressman.
Thank you very much, County Executive Olszewski. I'm really excited about this because for the last 15 years I've been traveling all over America visiting jurisdictions where they've been putting these kinds of systems in place and seeing the kind of empowerment that brings to small donors and ordinary citizens. And today I didn't have to get on a plane or a train or a bus. I was able to just get in my car and drive a couple of miles to come here to Baltimore County, where that leadership is again reflecting the desire of the broad public to have this empowerment, to feel like small donors, again, ordinary citizens are the ones calling the shots in their democracy. You just heard the design of this bill, the elements that it will have. All of them are meant to encourage candidates to reach out to friends, neighbors, community members, to have them lift up their candidacies. There's a sense out there across the country, a kind of cynicism sometimes, that when it comes to powering campaigns, funding campaigns, the insiders kind of have the advantage, and that, you know, if you don't have access to a lot of money or resources, you can't really be a viable candidate. But we're seeing through the best practices that this bill is modeled after around the country and even in the state of Maryland, that you can push back against that. You can show that everyday Americans are the ones that have the power in our democracy, even when it comes to sort of the financing of campaigns, which, as we all know, is a critical element. So I want to congratulate the county executive for his leadership, Councilman Jones, Councilman Marks for their leadership on this. I want to congratulate the citizens of Baltimore County because they had the opportunity to raise their voice in support of this kind of critical reform, and they chose progress. And so Baltimore County will now become one of these jurisdictions around the country that, frankly, I point to in Washington when we're trying to advance this kind of campaign finance reform at the national level. We point to experiments, successful experiments around the country. Now we're going to be pointing to Baltimore County, making the case that again, that sense of empowerment, being able to show up in campaigns as ordinary citizens and make a difference, is vibrant here in Baltimore County and makes the case for doing this everywhere around the country. The last thing I'll observe is what we've seen is when you put these systems in place, not only does the broad public feel more respected, but you increase the diversity of the candidate pool. Those who feel like they have the capacity, the wherewithal, the resourcefulness to step up and put their candidacy in front of the broad public. And that's good for our community broadly. It's good for our state. It's good for our country. It's certainly good for Baltimore County. So I want to thank the county executive for his leadership, members of the council. I want to thank Marilyn Perg. You're going to hear from Emily Scar in a minute. They've done amazing work in many jurisdictions in Maryland. And, you know, once again, this is an example of Baltimore County, Maryland showing leadership nationally. So, Mr. County Executive, thank you for that. And I think I'm now turning it over to Chairman Julian Jones. Councilman.
Thank you, Congressman Sarbanes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Council Chairman Julian Jones, and I am very excited to be here today. And I want to thank the county executive for introducing the legislation, as well as having the confidence in me to be the chairman of the work group. What makes me so excited about the results of the Fair Election Fund work group, or the Fair Election Fund, is we will give candidates the means to be able to raise the necessary funds so that they can get their message out. But what's most important to me is that it will enable the citizens of Baltimore County to have more choices, and the citizens of Baltimore County to make reasonable choices by being able to hear the message from the candidates that are running for office. Unfortunately, if you don't have the funds, you can't get your message out. So these folks will be on the ballot in times, but oftentimes the citizens wouldn't know what their positions are, where they stand. This fund will provide the resources so that the citizens will be able to adequately hear the positions of the candidates, and then make the proper decision, which will enable us to have the best elected officials we can here in Baltimore County, providing the best service to the citizens. So thank you again for instilling the confidence in me and giving me an opportunity to participate. And at this time, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Councilman David Marks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today. 7 years ago, an underfinanced, long-shot Republican candidate won the Maryland governor's race, in part because he had the resources from public financing to communicate a winning message. Across the country, public financing gives smaller parties and underfunded candidates a better opportunity to get their message across, and that is the spirit of the legislation being introduced today. I want to thank County Executive Olszewski for introducing this legislation in 2019 that started this important conversation. The Council agreed to send this charter change to the voters, and thousands of Democrats, Republicans, and non-affiliated voters endorsed this concept in the 2020 election. Good government transcends political party. This is a bipartisan issue, and I'd like to thank the members of this task force for their hard work and robust conversations as we got to this important milestone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Scar. I'm the director of Maryland PIRG and a leader in the Fair Elections Maryland Coalition. I also served on the task force. I want to thank the council president, county executive, and Councilman David Marks for their leadership on this very important issue. Maryland PIRG is a statewide, small donor-funded public interest advocacy organization with grassroots members across the state and here in Baltimore County. I've been proud to work with community members, organizational leaders like we have here today, Congressman Sarbanes, and elected officials across the state to bring this new way to fund elections to local and statewide government. Large and corporate campaign contributions play too big a role in elections for our office in Baltimore County. But in 2026, things can be different because of the Fair Elections Fund. The council should move quickly to finalize the Fair Elections Fund as introduced today, so that candidates can spend their time building support in communities instead of chasing big checks from wealthy and corporate donors. Because in our democracy, the amount of money your family makes, your race, your gender, shouldn't dictate the volume of your voice. The Baltimore County Fair Election Fund will serve the dual purpose of getting large and corporate money out of our elections and empowering Baltimore County's voters in the electoral process, renewing faith in our elections and our local government. We're already seeing these programs work across the state in Maryland. Our democracy is in a fragile state, and the vast majority of Marylanders, Baltimore County residents, and Americans see money in politics as part of the problem. I look forward to working with the county executive and the county council to finalize this program before the end of the year. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Morgan Drayton, the policy manager with Common Cause Maryland.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Morgan Drayton, and I'm the Policy and Engagement Manager for Common Cause Maryland. I'm also a member of the Fair Elections Maryland Coalition. First, I'd like to thank the County Executive, Council President Jones, and Councilman Marks for their leadership and helping us to develop recommendations for a working public financing program. I'd also like to thank Congressman Sarbanes for being a champion for democracy at the national level, advocating for reforms like the Freedom to Vote Act, which includes a fair elections program similar to those being used in Maryland. We have reached a critical point in our democracy nationwide, having conversations about how we can build a truly inclusive democracy where average, everyday people feel empowered enough to engage in our political processes. One of the best ways to achieve that is through small donor public financing, a program where people from diverse backgrounds are empowered to run for office, where small dollars are amplified with a match, and where candidates spend the bulk of their time building a campaign powered by the people they seek to represent. It's so exciting to see Baltimore County on the path to becoming the 5th jurisdiction in the state to establish a public financing system, especially at a time where residents in the county are discussing ways to diversify leadership. The Fair Election Fund will make it possible for more women, Black people, other people of color, and young people to run competitive races, as we've seen through our existing programs in Montgomery County and Howard County. Baltimore County residents sent a message to the council when they approved Question A, We now hope you make your voices heard in the days leading up to the hearing and council vote. This program can only be successful with the community's involvement over the coming weeks. I look forward to working with the Baltimore County Council, the county executive, and the wider community to bring fair elections to Baltimore County. Thank you. And Kendra.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming on a brisk morning, to say the least. I first want to say thank you to all the leaders up here, especially County Executive Olszewski, for really making this happen. I remember this being something that was discussed when it was candidate Olszewski, and so to be standing here a couple years later on the precipice of passing this major reform in Baltimore County is really inspiring to see what we can do when good government takes place. The bill before us today really represents the culmination of a lot of deliberation and tough discussions that the Fair Elections Work Group had over the course of several months, discussing how we can make it not just so that competitive races, but winning races through this fund can occur. And really, in the end, what we see now with this fund that's being proposed, it gives power back to the people in two ways. One, through candidates. Candidates now can run really grassroots campaign or community-oriented campaigns and win their elections. It also gives power back to small dollar donors who maybe only have $5, $10, or $15 to give, whereas before they maybe felt that was kind of pointless when there was big money involved. Now to these candidates will really make an impact in their local elections. And so I just really want to thank everyone again, and I'm excited to see us bring this to fruition. I'm really excited that the work group got to come up with a plan that encompasses all the ideas that we had, from the matching tiered system to incorporating limits that are reasonable but still allow for competitive and winning elections to take place. And with that, I'll turn it over to the county executive.
Thanks again to Samay and to the entire group before us who helped make this possible, and we're fighting at the national level. So with that, we're happy to take any questions you all may have.
All right, thank you all.
Okay, thanks everybody.